Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, the host of this show. And if you are new to this program, if you haven't heard it before, check out our archives because we've got some great interviews, including I want to specifically point out my episodes with Derek Harp and Paul Farrell, if you're interested in the topic that we're going to be talking about here today. But also in the archives, we have interviews with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from Netflix to Kinko's, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, and many more. And of course, I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where I help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. My guest here today, first, shout out to Steve Cahan, who's one of my past guests, who I asked him who he's grateful for, and Darren's name came up. His name is Darren Guccione. He's a cybersecurity expert, entrepreneur, and the creator of Keeper, which is a password management application, works with many different companies from AT&T to HTC, protects more than 10 million consumers in over 3,000 organizations worldwide. And he's also a cybersecurity expert who's been quoted in all kinds of major media outlets from CBS Evening News to Fox and Friends, USA Today, ABC, and Mashable, and also been named to the Chicago Top Tech 50 by Crain's Chicago Business. And fun fact, was an aspiring rock star, which we'll get into at the beginning of the interview. And of course, this is brought to you by Rise 25, my company where we help B2B businesses get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with Done For You podcasts and content marketing. You can learn all about it by going to our website at rise25.com. All right, Darren, pleasure to have you here. And I love the name of your band. So you're studying engineering, and you also have this band. You're kind of like a hard rock aficionado, and you're lead singer of this band, and kind of going in two very different directions, which is kind of fascinating to me. First of all, start with the name of the band, and what are you thinking as you're graduating from college? Are you thinking like, I'm going to pursue, becoming a rock star, and if that doesn't work out, my backup is engineering and entrepreneurship? And that just seems a little bit crazy.
No, look, I think music has always been a love of mine, since the sixth grade. I was in bands really since, probably 13 years old. And the band in college at U of I was named Yuppie Hippie. I think it was it was indicative of, I think, how we viewed ourselves. Most of us were engineers. Our drummer was in pre-law, but we were all engineers. One of our lead guitarists, we had two lead guitarists. One was in industrial design, became a toys designer, and he was amazing. But it was Yuppie Hippie. We played every Friday and Saturday like clockwork. We practiced on Thursdays, and then every other day was, basically engineering. They gave you 5 hours a day of homework, so it kept us pretty busy. Yeah,
for sure. And you actually went off to Los Angeles, to Hollywood, to pursue your music career right after graduating. But once you got there, you decided that it wasn't the right lifestyle for you. So if you'd put so much time and energy into this, what was it about kind of going pro that made you feel like, this isn't for me?
Yeah, well, I had this goal of becoming a lead singer of a, popular rock band, or at least joining a rock band and becoming huge and playing arenas and stadiums. It's just something that I aspired to do because I loved it. And when, sometimes when you have a vision of something and you actually go out and do it, it just, I think just generally the scene, the band members, the environment, what I wanted to do, just the overall trajectory wasn't there for me. And I decided to just pivot. And I was offered a fantastic position with a company named Bell Sports out of Rantoul, Illinois, to lead, product engineering, I think at a very young age. And that would bring me to the Far East. So I lived in Asia for 2.5 years with Bell Sports, developing, and co-designing mountain bike products. So my job was to take the designs from, Los Gatos, California is where we were located, and bring those designs to reality. So I take the designs, bring them to the factories, and I wouldn't come back from the Far East until those products were produced. So I had a fantastic time doing that, and I stayed in the music scene. I did some work, with some rock bands, in between. But it was a passion of mine. I've always believed, like, if you're passionate about something, you've got to pursue it, because the worst thing in life would be to die with regret, and that's something that I know will never happen with me, because I've always pursued.
Yeah.
And if I didn't like it, I would just pivot and try something else.
Okay, so this sounds like a fairly standard career trajectory, like you've heard a million times before.
Yeah.
Studying engineering undergrad, to Rockstar, to designing and producing mountain bikes in the Middle East, fairly standard. And then you end up with, tell us about Apollo Solutions, because this is an interesting company. We're talking late, kind of the tail end of the .com era, so late 90s. Company's around for less than 2 years, and then is sold to CNET. So talk about that.
Yeah. Well, before that, there's a really important point, and is that, I was a golf caddy since I was 12. That was my summer job, and I became an
That was not
scholar.
on my bingo card, by the way. Golf caddy was not the next one.
Yeah, so I was a golf caddy. My hair at the time, it ultimately grew to almost the bottom of my back, so my nickname was Hair, as in the hair on my head. And it was cool because I was given the Evans Scholarship, which was a blessing, and it's a full ride, and it paid for my school at U of I. Well, as I was caddying, I wound up meeting a gentleman who did mergers and acquisitions. He was a CPA, and ultimately, when I was at Bell, I decided that I'd love to pursue business and finance. So I went back to grad school in Chicago, got my master's in finance and accounting, sat for the CPA exam, and then ultimately went to work for him for 2.5 years doing mergers and acquisitions. When I was there, the advent of the internet and that proliferation, began to really take hold. And that's when I decided to ultimately leave and start my own firm. And the first month I started my own firm in M&A, I wound up meeting Craig Lurie from a payroll company named Paychex. Paychex, the payroll company.
Mm-hmm.
So
was he trying to sell to you? Trying to sell his services to you?
No. So what happened was Paychex came in to sell payroll services, and I just started, and they said, "Hey, do you have any clients that need payroll?" And I said, "I don't have any clients yet. I just started." And this young lady, really cool, she said, "Hey, I met this guy named Craig Lurie, and he's in the process of leaving Motorola to start his own company, and he built some kind of software, and he's looking for somebody to help him with his business plan. Can I make an introduction?" I said, "Sure." So that's how Craig and I met. And Craig, as you know, today is the CTO and co-founder of Keeper. So we've been partners really since October of 1998 in different business ventures. Yeah.
Wow. So tell us about Apollo, because this incredibly fast, even for the .com era, less than 2 years, and then it sold out to CNET. And it was actually one of the first e-commerce software engines.
Yep. So Craig and I met at a restaurant. I just said, "Hey, bring your file cabinet with you." It was a figure of speech, and I didn't realize it, but he actually pulled his file drawer out and brought it to the restaurant. He walked into the big metal file drawer with everything in it. And if you met Craig, you'd know that he's eccentric in that way, and that's like no big deal. So we went through everything, and I said, "Look, the first thing I don't want to look at numbers. Show me the product." So it was really cool because it was a web-based ASP solution, one of the first of its kind, for buying and selling computer products over the internet. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh my God, like this is the future." Now remember, this is like 1998 when, people would barely even think about putting a credit card into a computer.
Right. I mean, early days of Amazon even.
That's right. So most people were still shopping in malls and hanging out at the mall and going to stores. And I was looking at this like, oh my God, like, let's see, free parking. You don't have to drive there. It's super fast. You can compare products instantly, right? Get real-time pricing and inventory information and secure purchase within a few seconds. This is awesome. This is the future. So we sat down and I said, "Hey, I'm not that busy with my firm yet. I just started. So how about if we join forces? I'll be your CFO. I'll help you, I'll build the business plan, help you with all the infrastructure, and, I'll help
So
you
even though
raise
you
all
had
the money.
even though you had the engineering background, it sounds like you stayed away from like coding or anything engineering.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way that we delineated the business is exactly how we operate today. So I work closely with the front end. So design team reports to me, and then I'll, everything from finance, HR, sales, marketing, I would take care of that. And then Craig would lead on the development. So QA, dev, engineering, SecOps, DevOps, all of that falls under Craig. And that's exactly how we operate at Keeper today. So we bifurcate the responsibility on the business, and it's worked beautifully, since the early days.
Yeah. So you must have some kind of traction if CNET acquires you in less than 2 years.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting was, we were living off of like credit cards at the time. Craig had I think multiple mortgages on his house. I was living
Oof.
on my mom's couch.
Mm.
We had this office in Addison, Illinois, and we had this really clear vision and a fantastic product. And I said, look, we need to raise some capital. We need to do a Series A. So there was a trade show. You remember Comdex back in the day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
CNET was exhibiting there. And first demo that CNET saw, they just said, is this real, or is this, just sort of a mock-up? I'm like, no, this is real. And they said, we'll be at your office next week for diligence. We want to invest. And they came out on a Monday, and the following, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, they had wired us, $2 million on a Series A, and then wound up purchasing the rest of the company 18 months later. So it was pretty amazing, to go from, living on your mom's couch and eating ramen noodles every single day to having a fantastic outcome 18 months later. So it was really great.
What a rocket ship ride. And your background having done M&A must have been helpful in that.
Very. Yeah. So, I think the benefit of having the CPA, the whole background, because you study business law, you study compliance, financial, cost accounting, all of it's so beneficial just to understand how to set up accounting systems, financial systems, the whole back office, how a business functions, right? So it allowed me to take, products and build businesses around those products. And I think that's really important. I would say today, I spend a lot of time with Amy, our chief financial officer, who's amazing. But at the end of the day, 50% of my time is spent on product and product vision and roadmap with Craig. I spend a lot of my time working with, customers, both new and existing, to identify critical unmet needs of the market, and then of course delivering against those needs at speed. And that's the way that really I focus on what I do. But I would say that the CPA and that foundation was something that I would have never thought about. Like if you asked me, I'm coming off the stage, singing Van Halen with Yuppie Hippie at U of I. Hey man, you want to be a CPA? I'd be like, are you talking about like an accountant? Yeah, an accountant. You want to be an accountant? I would have never thought about that. Right.
Yeah.
So as you go through life, I think, as long as you have an open mind where your mind is amorphous, it's amazing, how many things you can learn as long as you realize that, information. I always tell my team, it's just text on a screen or text on a piece of paper. Just open your mind, relax, and bring it all in.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of pivots in my life.
Well, certainly. I mean, you were kind of going in the direction of creating an M&A firm, and then this new idea comes along. You meet Craig, and you start something completely different. I want to know, a lot of people that I talk to on here who've exited a business, they find themselves then with new acquiring co. And then, all of a sudden they have a lockout period or a year or two or something like that. And then they're just miserable. What was your experience like? Were you locked up? Were you working at the new company at CNET? And what was that experience like for you after having, made this big life decision to start your own company? And then all of a sudden you find yourself 2 years later working for another company.
Yeah, well, the day that we closed the deal with CNET, I had my next idea right at the closing table in terms of what I wanted to do.
Which was what?
And CNET, it was it was to design and create this mobile conferencing device.
Okay.
So you would
Like
take a
Zoom.
signal from
Oh,
a cell phone. No. So you would get a signal from a cell phone and you would multiplex it and allow multiple people with wireless headsets to join the call on the fly. So it was a mobile conferencing technology, and we called it call pod conferencing technology, which actually led to the birth of the next company, which was Call Pod. But, I made it clear that, look, if I'd love to work with you and help you with the transition. So I signed a consulting agreement with CNET, not an employment agreement. And that allowed me to pursue something that was non-competitive, but, at the same time, value added to what I wanted to do. And I spent the next few years working on that technology and wound up launching it once the patent issued.
Yeah. Now you mentioned a second ago, you spent a lot of your time on product vision, meeting with your customers, getting feedback from them. There are different approaches to this. Some people are kind of more visionaries and they come up with the idea, especially if it's in a new space that consumers are not used to. Others spend tons of time talking to users, getting feedback. Where do you fall on that spectrum? And how do you decide where to put your energy and time?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So, internally, we have a very meritocratic system in terms of how we gather feedback. And then, of course, we assign, different weights and measures to them. And then those get weighted inside of a framework to build out our roadmap so that we're always being pulled in the direction of the client. We don't just decide what we're going to build and then say, okay, let's build it. We hope they buy it. There's no chicken and egg. So everything that is designed and created at Keeper is a result of a high frequency, high mass, high density number of requests, right? But the interesting thing about, a customer or a prospect, it's almost like the same thing that you run into when you go to the doctor. Doctor will say, what's your problem? What's wrong? And you say, I have a fever, I'm nauseous, I can't sleep, my head hurts, I have the chills. Those are symptoms, right? But it's not necessarily the problem. So what's really important is a customer is not going to come to you and say, this is what I need you to invent. This is the product I need you to invent. They tell
especially
you,
when you got started, 12, 13 years ago now, which is before all these big data breaches, before cybersecurity was front page headlines all the time. So those early days, I imagine it would have been even less useful to talk to people about what kind of solution that they wanted.
Yeah, here's what it came down to. So at the time when we created Keeper, the first version, there was really no ubiquitous digital vault for storing sensitive and private information in a fully encrypted end-to-end format on a mobile device. Everything was really done or relegated in the browser or the desktop. So we looked at each other and said, wow, there's going to be this app revolution. The iPhone had come out, they were launching their app store, and Craig and I, sort of talked through this. And I just said, my God, look at this. If we can create an amazing product on a 2.5-inch screen, think about what we can do, in a normal desktop or the browser. So early on, when we started architecting Keeper, from day one, it was really around this whole premise of zero knowledge, like making sure that the customer or the client device is always in complete control of their master password and the encryption keys that are used to encrypt and decrypt info. And then, of course, as we moved upstream into B2B, it became more around the ability to provision into any architecture very fast. So it doesn't matter what identity solution or tech stack you're running, but make it really easy to deploy and very easy for people to use with we call zero trust and zero knowledge. It's a very simple way of saying, we never have access to your information as a vendor, nor should any third party unless you expressly share that information with them. And the mechanism at which we allow you to do that is with full end-to-end encryption.
Still, I have to ask you, as the CEO of a company, that your job is to protect other companies from data breaches and cybersecurity. That's fundamentally what you do. How do you sleep at night? That would
Yeah.
freak me out. I don't know that I'd be able to sleep because I'd constantly be thinking about all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't, here's the thing. It's like peace of mind is when you're focused on the present. Depression is when you're focused on the past, and anxiety is when you're focused too much on the future, right? So I work really hard at trying to stay in the present, but the things that keep me up at night, it's not the risk of a data breach because I have really strong confidence in our security model. I feel amazing about that. Where I stay up at night is around the anxiety, but it's not negative. It's the positive excitement and anxiousness about serving such a large untapped market that needs this product. There is a huge problem, especially in the SMB category, where you have 420 million potential SMBs and SOHOs globally that are under 24/7 attacked by cyber criminals. And most of these SMBs have no idea how to protect themselves. And unfortunately, every few seconds, literally, some individual or business is paying a ransom right now. I mean, that's how bad this problem is. So
Yeah.
the social aspect of what we do in terms of helping the community and just the overall social impact of this product is absolutely enormous. That's what keeps me up at night, is the ability to capitalize on that opportunity. But
Yeah.
I'm not up worrying.
And I'm sure when you see a headline of some additional data breach, it's got to be with mixed emotions. Part of you saying, it's awful that happened. And the other part, maybe perhaps thinking that in some ways those headlines help because it's going to inspire more people to take action.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's funny. Ann and I were talking about this earlier today, and people have a tendency of either being afraid of something they don't understand or just becoming numb to it, right? And most people know how to spell cybersecurity, but if you ask a small business owner, do you know how to protect your business against a ransomware attack? Do you know what you need to do? Most of them are just, they don't know. So we have such a pervasive job that we need to do in order to educate them by making them aware that this is not expensive for you, and it's very easy to use, and it's very accessible. And I think this has to be done on a grand scale. It's really important. It's astounding. The problem that we see, when you look at the press, it's the large ransoms that make the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
But in the aggregate, it's not the large single ransom that's also the issue. The biggest issue, 85% of the ransomware attacks and breaches happen against SMB and SOHO businesses, small office, home office, and small to medium-sized businesses. And those barely make the headlines. Why? Because they're not sensationalized.
Yeah.
If someone's paying a $5,000 ransom, the press would be like, well, who cares? It's only $5,000. We want to talk about the company that just paid 50 million.
Yeah, but it could be debilitating to this, depending on the size of the company. How has the pandemic and the proliferation of work from home, how has that changed the game for you guys and for cybersecurity?
Well, the number of attacks increased during the pandemic. The number of attacks increased sixfold. Wow. 600% increase. Think about it this way. When you have this mass migration to the cloud, coupled with distributed remote work, where you, me, we're all working from home, the number of endpoints that escalated were exponential. The number of cloud-based applications that we have to log into and secure exponentially increased. So the attack surface goes from being X to Y, and Y is 6 times the size of X. So cyber criminals are like eating at a buffet table 24/7, right? And they're grabbing low-hanging fruit. Because if you said to somebody, hey, do you know right now in your home office, if you are being targeted by the dark web at this minute on this device, do you even know if your credentials are being traded back and forth by and among cyber criminals on the dark web? They have your login credentials for one of your commerce accounts. Are you aware of that? Most people would say, no, I have no idea, because they're not running the cybersecurity software that they need.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then, right now we're recording this at the end of 2022. The last 6 months, everyone knows the markets have been kind of in the tank. And I imagine it's been a lot of companies that are underinvesting in this area in spite of the headlines.
Yeah, we have been blessed. We had a record year. This has been a very difficult, macro and microeconomic environment. I think the toughest environment in the past, 3 or 4 decades. We can all agree on that. Interest rates are going crazy, and they're not, stifling inflation. In fact, we have major issues with supply chain still. The key here is that when we talk to our teams and we talk about how hard it is out there, it's so important to be even more focused, more determined, more persistent, more relentless, right, in pursuing our goals. We know exactly what our goals are. They didn't change before or after the pandemic. They stayed exactly the same. So it's really important. And I think one of the benefits is there's a very positive environment at the company, because outside, if you look at any of the headlines or focus on what's happening with the environment, it can get pretty depressing. So we lift each other up, we help each other, and we were able to achieve, some really great growth, which I'm grateful for. And
what do you attribute that to, in spite of the economic, downturn?
Well, there was a definite increase in cyber attacks. So the demand for our products increased. We became more, I would say, flexible on pricing to make sure that, look, someone would come to me and say, I need to give this person a 50% discount or 60% off. I need to help this business. They're in trouble. I'd instantly approve it, right? So very flexible policies on discounting to help people in need or companies in need.
You sure you don't want us to edit that out later?
No, it's okay.
Fine by you.
It's we are realists. We believe that we've priced our products to sell. We believe we have the best product in the industry at the lowest entry price of any of our competition. We believe that.
Let me ask you about that, about the competition, because there are well-known players in this space now. I don't know when they started, if it was after you or not, but LastPass, OnePassword, people know about those. How do you view the competition? Do you view it as, there's a big enough pie for everyone, or do you see it as, we're fighting tooth and nail to get our own market share?
No, look, it's very interesting. We came to the market, 5 and 7 years after, LastPass and OnePassword respectively, and maybe it's the other way around, but we were at least 5 years, newer than they were. We are known as the market innovators. We have the most patents. When it comes to competition, I do not worry about them, not even for a second, because our focus is on the market's needs. And I believe if you address the needs of your market and you deliver at speed, you give them exactly what they're missing or exactly what they want, and you do it faster at a very fair price, you'll do great. And this market is so gigantic that there is enough business to go around and make our 3 main competitors, whether it's OnePassword or Dashlane or LastPass, even Bitwarden, all of the organizations can be large. It's no different than when you talk about enterprise cloud and you have Google Cloud, you've got Dell EMC, you've got AWS and Microsoft Azure. It's no different than having that discussion. This is such a massive, opportunity that it's physically impossible for one company to get all of the market share. It's just such a massive opportunity. So I think that, the competition, it's a fantastic measurement. Do we keep an eye on them? Of course, product teams keep an eye on competitive analyses, but what we really focus on is addressing the critical unmet needs of our target market. And as I said, delivering on those needs at speed, that's really important to us.
When I interviewed Steve Cahan, he said of the 20 different CEOs he works with regularly, you were one of his favorites, or I believe he said actually you were the favorite. What do you attribute that to? What is it you're doing managing this company that is the reason that he would point you out as an example?
I don't really, I mean, look, I first of all, I find it humbling because he's absolutely, you know, he is absolutely brilliant. I mean, as a CMO, he has been such an amazing mentor to me because I love marketing. But I would say that I think the values that he and I have are quite simply consistent. You know, I put the best interests of the company first. And by the company, I'm talking about all of its stakeholders. And I always put myself last. It's just the way that I look at things. I think that if you make the decisions that are in the best interest of the company and you're relentless at pursuing those, I think you'll get to a really good place. But I think with Steve, what he looks for is the same thing that I look for in all of my team members is passion. The passion is by far the most important thing because what we do is so hard and the amount of time that we put in, like I don't view a week as 40 hours. I view a week as 168, right? So if somebody, was to say, well, can you achieve, greatness in 40 hours in technology? I would say, no, you cannot. I'm being honest. I just don't think it's possible because you have competition, you've got market opportunity, and things move at a scale and a rate that you are not able to control. So if you look at the frequency spectrum of success being 128 hours, that's where the success occurs. It doesn't occur in the first 40. So for example, all of the planning, all of the strategy that we do, right? All of the detailed work, pre and post execution is done before or after normal work hours, right? And Steve has always been there. So if I reach out to Steve, he has no problem talking to me at 9:30 on a Thursday night for an hour to review a strategy or an idea that I have with either PPC marketing or some type of distribution strategy or a pricing strategy. But no, I just to answer specifically, why does he think I'm his favorite? I can't really answer that. I can just tell you that these are sort of the traits that I live by, and I think he's come to appreciate that, and I appreciate him.
Yeah. I want to wrap up with my final question, which is I'm a big fan of gratitude. And if you look around at your peers and contemporaries, however you want to define that, so maybe others in your industry, other CEOs of tech companies, however you want to define it, who do you respect? Who do you admire? Who would you want to call out and thank?
There's a lot. I don't want to be holistic, but I have a capacity that pulls out the positive aspects of people, right? Because everyone has their sharp edges and their nuances. And, for example, I think Steve Jobs was amazing. Read his book cover to cover, studied as many videos and interviews as I possibly could. I think Elon Musk is amazing. I think absolutely brilliant, maybe sees the world quite differently, more radically than others, but he's an example in the purest sense of living to the extreme at such a rate, like, the 168-hour work week, to invest every minute that you possibly can into executing against your dreams and vision and all of your objectives and goals. I think that makes him quite attractive as a leader and as an innovator, because that's what we look for. But there's people that are not well known or not famous that had such a profound and positive impact on me. There were a lot of people that I caddied for, that taught me this is how you treat people, this is how you act like a gentleman, this is how you become professional and self-actualized, right? This is how you pursue and achieve your goals. And I had to clean the floor once with a toothbrush because I did something wrong. And at the time, my first caddy master, he was rough around the edges. I started caddying when I was 12. I left early. He wanted me to go 2 rounds at, 8 hours to 10 hours a day. I would get there at 6:30 in the morning, get dropped off. I would caddy for 4.5 hours, and then he'd want me to go out again. One day I was tired, didn't feel well, and I had my mom pick me up. And the next day I showed up at work. He went in there and made me clean the bathroom, including the toilet.
Oof.
Yeah, with a toothbrush. So
good times.
Needless to say, he taught me, like, look, the whole premise of that was, it was very simple. It's like, look, I'm trying to show you how to maximize the value of your day and to get the absolute most of your day. When you have value and it's there waiting for you, take it. Don't push it to the side. Go after it. Yeah. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
So there were invaluable lessons. I know that's an extreme one, but it had a profound impact on me.
Yeah, no, I think back at coaches that I had younger, and I kind of the same way. And Elon Musk is getting a lot of blowback these days with some of the things that he's done. I still think he's an amazing entrepreneur. Some other time I'll tell you the story about, I met him when Tesla was in the tank and was about to collapse around 2010. And interesting guy, amazing vision. Darren, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you if they have questions or connect with a member of the team?
Sure. Keepersecurity.com. And thank you so much for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Darren.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.